You could see Lane Norton before he approaches the deadlift bar doing his theatrics, and also probably referencing scientific research that there is a wake-up effect to doing things like slapping your thighs with all the muscle spindles with great force. Now, here's my concern about posts like this. Coming up, got a thigh slapping post.
Tap their quadriceps hard 10 times before races, not for warm up, but for neural activation that increases power output by 18%. Your quadriceps have the highest density of muscle spindles, sensors that communicate with your motor cortex. Slapping creates rapid stretch reflex that wakes up your entire motor system. Sports scientists measured the power output. 10 slaps increased vertical jump by 18%, sprint speed by 12%, reaction time improved 30%. The slaps must be hard enough to sting slightly. This sharp sensory input floods your motor cortex with activation signals. Your nervous system interprets it as prepare for explosive movement. The effect peaks at 30 seconds post-slapping and lasts about 5 minutes. Olympic coaches.
Okay, interesting stuff. And I too have read some information about spiking dopamine prior to competition by engaging in theatrics that we see many of the Olympic sprinters and jumpers doing. Their rituals where they're jumping up and down explosively, screaming out in the manner of Noah Lyles or the great Norwegian hurdler Karsten Warholm, who's a professional slapper. He's pounding his chest, he's slapping his thighs right before he enters the box and heads out for a peak performance. So there is some great validity to the idea of waking up the central nervous system and priming it for a peak explosive effort. You could see Lane Norton before he approaches the deadlift bar doing his theatrics, and also probably referencing scientific research that there is a wake-up effect to doing things like slapping your thighs with all the muscle spindles with great force. Now, here's my concern about posts like this. We seem to have this tendency today to obsess about science and all the great research and all the access we have and the ability to exchange information. New research reveals that tomatoes help reduce the risk of prostate cancer, and so do pomegranates, so drink the pomegranate juice every day. That kind of thing, where we make these intuitive leaps to apply some scientific conclusion or scientific premise right directly into real life. And especially with this post, it raised my hackles because of the numbers that the narrator here conveyed. Slapping your thighs aggressively right before your race will deliver a 12% increase in sprinting speed. That's a lot, isn't it? So I'm a devoted, hard training masters track and field athlete. My favorite event being the 400 meters. That's one lap around the track. At 60 years old, I can run around 60 seconds. It's a tough effort for me. I do want to get faster and work hard and bring that time down to 59. Who knows, maybe 58 point something someday. But a 12% increase in sprint speed from running a 1 minute per lap, that's around a 4 minute mile, and that's 15 miles per hour, nice and easy to calculate here in our head. A 12% increase results in a running speed of 16.8 miles per hour. So if I slap my thighs, you're telling me I'm going to increase my speed from 15 miles an hour to 16.8. That would give me a 400-meter time of 53.8 seconds. Anyone remotely familiar with track and field can realize that this insight, this conjecture is royal screaming bullshit.
The new B-Rad Super Drink is a scientifically advanced electrolyte and hydration beverage that represents the very best in hydration, performance, and recovery. Our delicious strawberry lemon flavor hydrates 28% faster than water and contains potent performance agents like creatine, Creatine is rarely found in energy drinks, but it greatly enhances cellular hydration and muscle power. We also have citrulline, which is great for improved oxygen delivery to muscles, better blood flow, increased endurance, and reduced muscle soreness. Taurine is for reduced oxidative stress, better fat burning, and more efficient muscle contraction. Essential amino acids. They delay fatigue, improve protein synthesis, and speed muscle recovery. You can order directly on bradnutrition.com using the code BRAD20 for a 20% discount, or also find it on Amazon along with all the other BRAD nutrition products and get your free shipping with Amazon Prime. Try Super Drink today. You're going to love it.
World record holding fellow master sprinter Lion Martinez of Sweden, 100 meters in 10.79 seconds at age 45 plus division. He's the fastest 45-year-old of all times in recorded human history. And he says, total garbage is his comment. Cynthia Monteleone, also world champion 400-meter female master sprinter in the 45 plus division, coaches numerous elite masters track and field athletes as well as Olympic level athletes, says no study backs this claim up. Neural activation, what are you talking about? Do it correctly with plyos, sprints, or PAP, not slapping quads. So that's the problem, that we take some perhaps decent, thoughtful information about doing that little wake-up call. Warholm slaps his face too, which also has high sensitivity, along with the muscle spindles in the quads. We take an insight and then we vomit out a ridiculous number like an 18% increase in power or a 12% increase in sprint speed. So don't throw the whole thing in the garbage can, but we need to apply critical thinking to these scientific insights that get pounded down our throat every day. I'm also calling out the high popularity of zone 2 cardiovascular exercise for longevity and the VO2 max workout as one of the ultimate objectives. In order to promote longevity, you need to increase your VO2 max. I did an entire show talking about how VO2 max is highly overrated and misappropriated, oversimplified, all those things where we're taking a basic, broad scale insight about what it means to be fit and what it means to promote longevity and trying to pinpoint it into a number and some laboratory research. And VO2 max values are strongly correlated with morbidity risk. Of course, that's true, but it's sort of like a proxy for overall fitness. And a quote unquote VO2 max specific workout, like the popular 4x4 minutes at maximum effort with 4 minutes rest. Hey, it's a great workout, but it's certainly not the end all to where you need to plug that into your weekly schedule obsessively and robotically in order to boost your VO2 max, in order to live longer. So taking long leisurely walks will also promote VO2 max. Doing short sprints will also promote VO2 max. And then, as the research clearly reveals, but is rarely talked about, VO2 max is highly constrained by genetics and is minimally trainable. So you can boost your VO2 max a bit, going from out of shape to medium shape and better shape, of course, but then you're going to reach this ceiling where you have a competent VO2 max. You have a VO2 max that's outside of the danger zone, but trying to increase it more from there has minimal correlation with anything, including endurance athletic performance and including longevity. So don't oversimplify things like, hey, I got to boost my VO2 max and I got to do a bunch of time in zone 2 training, and then I'm checking my boxes. And some of you health, fitness leaders, you know who I'm talking to when I talk about oversimplifying and trying to plug everything into scientific numbers. Much more nuanced and complex than that. VO2 max is overrated. Zone 2 cardiovascular exercise is overrated and oversimplified because we don't hear anyone talking about the wonderful, amazing benefits of zone 1 cardiovascular exercise, like medium to brisk walking or even slow to medium walking if you're not that fit. This has a tremendous aerobic conditioning benefit, but all we do is talk about pegging that heart rate at that zone two, and that's going to be your key to getting fitter. In a lot of cases, it's could be an overly stressful pattern if you keep pegging your heart rate up at zone two instead of spending sufficient time in zone one. As I talk about a lot, the greatest marathoner of all time, Eliud Kipchoge, spends 83% of his weekly training time in zone one, not zone two, zone one. Hey, for him, that's a 626 to 803 pace per mile at high altitude. And so if you see him running along the trail outside of Eldoret, Kenya, you'll go, wow, he's really hammering today. Nope, he's doing a zone one workout, but he's so supremely conditioned that it correlates to running along at a pretty decent pace. For mere mortals like you and I, spending that time in zone one will indeed not even be a jog in many cases. And this is the premise that Mark Sisson and I talk about extensively in the book Born to Walk, that the vast majority of endurance runners shouldn't really be running. They should be mostly walking in the model of the greatest marathon runner of all time and the other elite athletes that spend all that time in the aerobic zone, building and building their aerobic competency at a comfortable pace rather than pegging the heart rate right up at the edge of zone two because some scientist spouts out that that shows tremendous benefits. Also, keep in mind, with all this research about fitness, exercise physiology, athletic peak performance, and what this guy is talking about here with the 12% increase in sprinting speed, we are most likely dealing with sedentary or minimally conditioned subjects. I promise you and bet you my life and my laptop computer that I'm recording this on, that if you take a group of well-trained, competitive sprinters, you are not going to see anybody increasing their sprinting speed by 12% for any reason or any substance that they inhale into their nose before, or how many slaps they get onto their thigh. In fact, you know what the scientifically validated technique for the greatest increase in sprinting speed possible is? That's right. It's having a gun to your head. So when you are forced to run for your life, that is going to generate by far the greatest increase in sprinting speed than any other intervention. And that also goes for your endurance. So I don't think I'm quite capable of finishing a marathon right now since I don't do endurance training anymore. But if someone came over right now and interrupted this recording and put a gun to my head and said, hey, Brad, let's go run 26.2, I promise you I am going to be able to finish that event. I might go straight from there to the hospital and get some intravenous fluids and whatever else they need to carry me off the course. But I'm painting this picture and illustrating that unpleasant insight of having a gun to your head, because that's when we're really going to have the maximum wake up for the nervous system. Slapping the thighs is going to be a distant second. And even in the case of having a gun to my head, I promise you, I would not be able to run a 53.8 second 400 meters. So take the scientific insights with a grain of salt. Take the data and the biohacking and the wearables and all the things that you have at your disposal with some intuitive reasoning and some critical thinking behind it. I just heard popular strength training expert Dr. Andy Galpin on his podcast talking about how HRV has some reliability and some variation between person to person issues, such that certain people have minimal variation in HRV, even with stress patterns being extreme in their life, and certain people have extreme variation in HRV. Even with minimal disruption or challenges to their homeostatic balance. What does that mean? It means that we can't make HRV the end all. We can't make morning heart rate the end all. Morning heart rate has a long delay period, according to Galpin. So if you start getting overtrained and feel crappy, you might have a stable morning resting heart rate for several days afterward. And when it comes to HRV, there's perhaps a delay in certain people, perhaps not. Great stuff to reason with and measure, as I've done for many, many years. But I always come back to the intuitive approach, the intuitive foundation of making correct training decisions. Nothing else is more powerful or more relevant than your intuitive sense of what you should do with your body day in and day out. Dr. Kelly Starrett, author of Becoming a Supple Leopard and the Ready State podcast host, says that, quote, readiness to train, the subjective readiness to train evaluation of the individual, is the number one metric ever discovered, better than blood lactate meters, better than HRV, better than anything that you can do in a scientific laboratory. It's the athlete getting up, getting their butt out of bed, walking down the hall. Are you shuffling? Are you limping? Do you have a little bounce in your step? And then getting out. And what I say a lot, especially to endurance athletes, is, hey, you're not sure about your readiness to train or your state of recovery. Go out there and begin the workout and do the warm-up mile or whatever, or head to the track. In my case, when I'm doing sprint workouts, I'll go through my warm-up process, my drills, my dynamic stretching. And when I get into medium to difficult intensity skipping drills, jumping drills, things like that, I'll notice whether I have that usual explosiveness and that usual central nervous system focus, stimulation, and pop, as they call it when we're talking about jumping or sprinting. Or on other days, I'll notice a tiny bit of sluggishness, maybe even having to start with a basic set where I'm checking my usual time for a 100-meter stride across the grass, noticing it slower, or noticing a little hitch in my step or tightness in my lower back. And none of the assembly of the greatest coaches in the world sitting in the stands, all the dirty dozen of the best Olympic coaches, whatever, nothing is going to be superior than my intuitive sense of what I should do with my body on that day. Oh, Brad, but you're an expert, but you have a lot of experience sprinting and training and making training decisions. This goes for anyone, from the most basic novice athlete, novice fitness enthusiast, to the elite Olympians who also apply that intuitive approach in every case. So I encourage you to own your own voice, protect your own voice. I tell this to young endurance athletes all the time when they're in the high school system or the college system. The coach is doing their best, but they're coaching 18 or 23 people. They can't account for your own voice and your own intuition better than you. So intuition trumps all scientific insight, scientific data. It's not that complex. Please do not get intimidated by all the information that is shoved down your throat as you enthusiastically consume information, trying to become a more knowledgeable fitness enthusiast. Thanks for listening, watching, and thanks, Bud, for putting up this interesting post. Let's just be careful when we're spouting these research stats like they're the end all or that they have a direct application to real athletes. Again, I was trying to finish that statement that most of these studies are taken with minimally conditioned. Usually it's volunteers from a college campus who agree to get paid $60 to go through these protocols and then come out with a 12% increase in sprinting speed. Maybe they were partying too much the previous night, came into the facility, did their first sprint or jump test, and it was pretty drag ass. And then they said, okay, I better get serious here because they're paying me $60. Let me go 12% faster on my next repetition that they're measuring. And boy, then it gets spread out to the world like it's the end all. Not feeling that. So be careful. Use your critical thinking in the background at all times.
I hope you enjoyed this video and will hit like and subscribe below. You can visit bradkearns.com for show notes, timestamps, and helpful links. Comment on the video. We read them all. You can also email us, podcast@bradventures.com. I love to connect. And the best way to support this channel is to check out the finest quality performance nutrition supplements in the world at bradnutrition.com or at the BRAD store on Amazon.